Today we're going to learn some tips and tricks of how I paint the Indomitus Necron Diorama. So if you haven't liked, subscribed and everything, do that right now and the video will begin shortly.
That the entirety of the cosmos is accessible to each and every individual's mind, connecting to the great mind, the great spirit.
Welcome back to the channel, collectors. So, in this very much anticipated painting guide of how I painted this diorama, we're going to learn about different materials which I used to paint this diorama to create this very realistic dirt effect. This video is part of a greater series of how I cover in detail and in depth how I created, planned and painted this Indomitus Necron Diorama. If you want a behind the scenes look of how I sculpted this diorama and how I planned it, you can check out my Patreon where there's a video covering that. So collectors, pick up your brushes and let us begin.
Alright, welcome back. So right now I'll be painting the diorama. If you would like to learn how I've constructed this diorama, you can head on to our Patreon page. The construction video is a Patreon exclusive video and you guys can check that out. Alright, so let's get into painting this diorama. Right now I'm just covering the exposed resin with Games Workshop Sterling mud. There are a variety of texture paints out there that you can use, which are good, and I also recommend the ones from Vallejo. Why do I use texture paint? Is because it saves me a lot of time. Using texture paint allows you to just directly put on color and texture rather than putting PVA and put sand then put color over. It takes up a lot of time, and like I always say, the most expensive thing about painting is not the paint but actually the time. Alright, so by putting on Sterling mud, you can check out the other video that I've done about thinning down texture paint. Thinning down texture paint also allows the texture paint to reach hard to reach areas, and it makes it look a lot more convincing, because sometimes texture paint can dry in a clump and you get this really smooth surface which you don't want. You want the paint to dry as evenly as possible so that there's no smooth surfaces around. Alright, so as you can see right here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cover only the resin areas in texture paint. Okay, so right here what I'm trying to do also is rather than having the texture paint cover all the resin, I'm heading to use a bit of raw umber paint. You can easily substitute this paint with another brand. Dried bark from Games Workshop is a good substitute for this color because it gives a slightly cooler brown tone as compared to the reddish Sterling mud. You want the finish to be as random as possible so that there are patches of warm earth and patches of cool earth. You don't want everything to be uniform and colored the same way, because if that's the case, it will look a little bit too uniform. Alright, so right now in this stage, what I'm using is a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. This Agrax Earthshade allows the transition from dirt to rock to look a lot more realistic. So what happens here is that the water will dissolve a little bit of the dirt and you seep into the rock. That's why you get a little bit of brown coloration onto the rocks. This is why I'm using an Agrax Earthshade to do a transition between the rocks and the dirt. What I'm also doing is I'm painting Agrax Earthshade over some of the rocks. So as you can see, the greenish rock is actually an onyx, and with this colored paint put over, with this transparent paint put over the rock, it allows the onyx to showcase its true color, which is green. I've been experimenting a lot with rare rocks, and yeah, these are some of the results. So I'm mixing in some pigments, namely grey and European earth from Vallejo pigment series, and I'm using this as a wash. So what's happening is that there's a little bit of black ink in there along with airbrush thinner, and I'm doing a shadow wash onto the entire diorama, and this allows the diorama to look even more complex because there's not only different colors, but there are also different tones of the same color. And because by nature of the pigments, where they settle tend to be higher in value and makes the entire diorama look a lot more complex. So right now I'm just using pure European earth mixed in with a little bit of airbrush thinner, and I'm gonna use this to start creating a wash. Alright, so this wash, I'm washing it all over the rocks, and the end result is pretty interesting. Where you want to wash, you want to look at where the water might build up, and those are the areas which you want to focus on, because the sedimentation will happen where water is collected and dried up, hence making the entire diorama look a lot more realistic. So you don't want to apply this too evenly, you want to do it in random areas. And right now I'm mixing in just a little bit of green pigment to emulate moss growth. So moss will usually grow where the water will collect, and these are my thought processes when I'm creating a diorama. You can learn about more thought processes from the Patreon video which we have produced on how we have sculpted and created this diorama. You want to do this in several layers so that the transitions are not as drastic as not drastic at all. Alright, so now we're going to do a bit of dry brushing with Ashen Grey. And a little bit of Dawnstone dry brush. And this is the end result of the diorama in just a little bit. Alright, there we have it. This is the finished diorama with all the finished painted miniatures placed on it. As you guys can see, when painting the diorama, you want to add many layers of textures and many layers of complexities, and this is the result. Always remember that when you're painting a diorama, you want to make sure that the entire diorama fits the mood setting. So after painting the miniatures, you gotta start tinting each highlight and each color to suit the individual miniatures which have been placed onto the diorama. Alright, I hope you found this video useful, and if you want to find out more, you can always stay tuned and listen to me blabber about stuff. So as you guys can see in painting dioramas, I use a lot of materials to create different textures and to break up the silhouettes to make it look a lot more complex. What do you think about these different techniques? Let me know in the comments below, alright? Right before this, I was sculpting this diorama, and if you want to learn how I've done it, check out the Patreon link below, and there's an exclusive video there for all my patrons. So if you found this video useful, you might want to check out my other video, such as me painting the wetted brush effect on the Necron Reanimator. I find this Necron Reanimator effect looking very unique, and I think it would be useful for you too. Alright, so that's enough of me. You guys know the drill. Like, subscribe and all the other stuff, and I will see you in the next video. See you!